Me too today.
Good Monday evening, high school sports fans. Joe Gilloway with Lingelstown Gazette Sports live from the Orchard Street studio. And this is our high school football week 15 recap show, recapping the state semifinals games and talking about the upcoming state championship weekend. I'll be joined momentarily by a couple members of our panel of experts as soon as we're done thanking those responsible for bringing you tonight's show, our Lingelstown Gazette Sports Platinum sponsors. And they are Rickabaz Electric, Payer Apparel, Ted's Bar and Grill, Hoffman Ford, Freedom Financial Wealth Management, The Tire Mart, American Legion Post 272, Modern Imprint, Team PA, AAU Basketball, Crystal Bobbitt, Howard Hanna Real Estate, Underdog Sports Bar and Grill, Capital Region Insurance Agency, Sam Hartley Decking, and Tonino's Pizza. Thank you to these great local businesses for their continued support of Lingelstown Gazette Sports and our area's student athletes. Okay, we have a lot upcoming. Let me I want to breeze through this. Sometimes people, if they don't know and they hear right now, they're going to want to tune in for some of this stuff. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock again, Tuesday the 3rd, we're going to have episode number 1 of our Boys High School Hoops recap show. Very similar to what we're doing tonight, to what we've done since week 1 of the high school football season started. And we're going to have a panel of experts. Due to be on our panel, Kirk Smallwood, retired legendary Harrisburg High coach Kirk Smallwood, is supposed to be a regular panel member. That would be awesome if Coach Smallwood would join us. Also, Coach Ty Savercool, another guy, real smart, great basketball mind, along with sometimes guests, Travis Waters. Okay, I'm not going to hold you to it, Travis, but if you could jump on sometimes, that would be great. The voice of Delco, Dave Berman's planning on joining us. Big shot Ben Dupree, he's one of our football panelists. If Terry ever wants to jump in, you're always welcome. And a friend of mine, John Velio, is a good basketball guy as well. So looking forward to that tomorrow night at 7. Wednesday, we have 2 for the price of 1, 7 o'clock. One of Pennsylvania's elite track and field sprinters who just made his college choice public. We're not going to spoil those beans. It is out. It is public now, but we'll talk about that tomorrow night. And that's Central Dolphins' Gabriel Scott. Great young man, great athlete, and looking forward to having Gabe Scott on Wednesday. After that, we're going to give you, again, 2 for the price of 1. Right after the Gabriel Scott interview, Pennsylvania High School Football Championship Trivia. We have Brad and Gary, both of Western Pennsylvania. They're the guys who signed up. They're going to square off for some super difficult and super fun questions regarding the history of championship football in our great Commonwealth. And we do have, I went over and picked up some Primanti Brothers gift cards today. So thanks to Primanti Brothers for sponsoring Wednesday's trivia show. And then Sunday, 12/8, a week from yesterday at 6 o'clock, back to 6 o'clock. One last time until next season. It's our high school football recap show. We're going to talk about the state championship games, recap, all 16 weeks and what we got a chance to watch and experience over the past 4 months. And we have a guest panelist, Coach Fort Chapman, is going to join us. And he's a 3-time Pennsylvania State football champion as a starting quarterback, an assistant coach, and a head coach. So I know that was a mouthful, but I had to get all that out. So anyway, let's just talk quickly about some housekeeping stuff. And then I'm going to bring in, we have Travis Waters and Terry Clark. The season started on Friday, August 23rd. We are now 101 days into the 2024 season. We started with 555 teams competing for 6 state championships. From Class A to 1A down, there are now 12 teams remaining. 543 have been eliminated. The games will be played this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, December 5th, 6th, and 7th. We're going to talk about the days and the times in the upcoming moments here. And only 2 semifinals games, guys, were decided by less than double digits. That was Pitt Central Catholic Harrisburg, Land Peter Strasburg, Thomas Jefferson. The rest were kind of, blowouts or close to them. And so let's just jump right into our featured games, okay? We're going to start with Harrisburg, not because they won, and we're not happy about that, but because it was a great game. It was a wonderful game. It wasn't decided till the very end. Pittsburgh Central Catholic 38, Harrisburg 33. I'm going to intro with one sentence here. I think the story of that game is that the team who played better in 2 of 3 phases of the game, arguably the 2 most important phases, offense and defense, probably did not win due to its ineptitude in the third phase, special teams, along with a few costly penalties. Travis, I'll start with you. What did you think of that game?
Yeah, I would agree that Harrisburg was the better team as far as offensively and defensively. Um, and I would say 2 turnovers, 2 costly turnovers. Quincy Brandon had an outstanding kick return, took it off the, I think, right off the goal line and returned it into Pittsburgh Central Catholic territory, but unfortunately he fumbled. And before that, Messiah Mickens actually fumbled. Looked like they were probably going in for a score at some point because Harrisburg was really moving the ball. So it was really 2 costly turnovers. And I would say the area as far as special teams was concerned for Harrisburg was the cover, was the kick coverage, kickoff coverage being, and I kind of said this in our chat. Like the thing that worried me about Harrisburg is that they struggled covering kicks over the course of the year. And a lot of times kids were in position, but they just didn't make the play. And I know I saw one time during the game where a kid actually tried to avoid a block, and you do that, you're creating the lane on the kickoff.
Mm-hmm.
You got to stay down in that lane if you got to take on that block, because if you jump out and try to go around that block, you're creating the lane, and that's
Sometimes it
exactly what
feels
happened.
unnatural. Sometimes it feels like you
Yeah,
should move to one side or the other, but the way that that's designed is you have to stay in your lane, whether it feels right or
yeah,
not. And um, the,
yeah.
the turnover situation, Harrisburg had 5 fumbles, lost 2, and they had an interception. Pitt Central Catholic, 0 fumbles, of course, lost 0, no interceptions. So 3 versus
So
2,
it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing the game was that close. It
correct.
just shows you the talent that Harrisburg has and how well they really did play. But I also say another issue was the punts, the first 2 punts. As far as blocking on those first 2 punts, and they really made a nice adjustment where it looked like they were going for it, so Pittsburgh Central Catholic couldn't get their regular punt return on there, and then they shifted into a punt, and then a punt formation. Then another time where they actually put Kevin Brown in the backfield, they moved some guys around and actually did that on the kickoffs as well, where it's like, okay, you had some second team guys who really aren't getting time covering those kicks, weren't getting the job done. You start seeing some different numbers out there in kickoffs, and all of a sudden, okay, Pittsburgh Central Catholic's not getting the same field position. And when Pittsburgh Central Catholic had to move the ball from in their territory, they scored 3 points. That was
Yeah,
it. Every time they scored, it was because of short fields.
the punts, Harrisburg punted 6 times for an average of 21 yards.
Yeah,
Central
short punts
Catholic
as well. Yeah.
punted 7 times for an average of 44 yards. So you're talking
And only
about
gave
more
up
than
one
double.
and kicked the ball in the end zone every time except once. Everything
Yeah,
was a
man.
touchback except one time where Quincy Brandon probably could have let it go, and it would have been a touchback, but he made it. He caught it right at the goal line and had an excellent return.
Special teams never seem all that important until they are, okay? Until they become important, because I think clearly Harrisburg won 2 out of the 3 phases. And again, offense and defense, and they didn't win the game. And a lot of it had to do with special teams. The penalties, Harrisburg 8 for 82, Central Catholic 6 for 46. Kind of awkward or a little bit different as far as, but still, Harrisburg was able to overcome that part. I thought, the
Well, they should
penalties.
have had 7 clearly on a pass interference on the
There's no doubt about it.
halfback pass for
Yeah, we
Mickens.
saw we saw that. We saw that. Eric Thomas, how are you, sir? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, good evening, gentlemen. How you doing?
Good. How are you? So
Good.
we're talking about. I'm sure you heard Harrisburg and Central Catholic. Terry, let's bring you in here. Harrisburg played from behind. I thought, well, they did. It wasn't, I don't think they did the entire game, and still did a great job at handling and managing that situation. I mean, what did it
Yeah,
feel like to you? I'm sitting there watching. They're at the 18-yard line. I think there was still like plenty of time left. Not a lifetime
yeah.
remaining, but they had time to kind of finish that drive off.
And Terry, can I say, I know, Terry, I see you're really jumping. You want to jump in? I just want to say one more thing. You're absolutely right. They showed tremendous heart, perseverance. being down 17. But
Phew.
I'm watching the game and I can feel. I said they can come back in this game because it's just because you could tell they could move the ball. And it's interesting. The thing that kind of got them started was the reverse to Sheffy, which was almost disaster, which was
Mhm.
almost a disaster. But credit to him. I mean, it was an outstanding run, and it was Sheffy who kind of who sparked them. But stars for Harrisburg really stepped up.
The
Was
stars were
Deontay
they were
Sheffy,
stars. Yeah, they were stars.
Messiah Mickens. I mean, I'm gonna say this: Rick Brown, sophomore linebacker. Look for him next year. I mean, he's looking like he's going to be a big time linebacker. He played well throughout the playoffs, and he was all over the place.
Right.
Of course, Kymer Williams was his normal self. Elias Cope made tremendous plays. Quincy Brannon, Nehemiah Yule, those guys played. They played their hearts out, and they played well enough. You know, you talk about that last drive, and I'm going to get off here because I thought it was a tremendous game. You know, when they were going down that last drive, they had that 2nd and 1, and I thought Jayon Lewis, which I mean, you see his growth throughout the season. He's an excellent quarterback. I mean, he's accurate. He makes great decisions.
He's gotten so much
I
better.
do. Oh my goodness! I mean, he's tremendous, and he's a good athlete. I do wish he would have ran the ball because he could have ran for the first. He probably would have been down to the 10-yard line. They had a timeout left, but that's just when you're playing, things happen, and it's just I know people are saying, oh, do this, do that, but you're not out there, and and a lot of people who are talking, quite honestly, never played the game.
I didn't hear
Especially
one
played quarterback and played at a high
not
level.
one smart football person I did not hear say anything about Lewis's decision or how Lewis played or what he should have done. Not one person. If they did,
He was a large
shame on him.
He was a large part of the reason why they came back.
You better believe it.
I mean, he was out there throwing that ball, and he's tough.
So Terry, I'll get you started the same way I got Travis started. Just tell me what you thought of that game. Is there anything that we missed that you want to point out? Nope. Sounds like Minnie Mouse. You're muted. Okay, there we go. Nope. How about you, Eric? Did you watch any of that game?
Yeah, saw some of it and wasn't terribly surprised with the outcome. I mean, I think Pitt Central, I know that Pine Richland beat them up. We will dissect that here in a little bit, but I wasn't too surprised with the outcome. I think what kind of surprised me a little bit is that as good as they looked against State College the week before, where they just kind of had their foot on the gas the whole time.
Yeah.
Travis brought it up. I mean, there was even a stretch where it looked like they were going to blow that thing open. You never felt like it was over.
They were up 3 scores in the third quarter.
And there was sort of like a sense of invincibility when they played State High 2 weeks ago, where, I mean, they got up 14-0 in that game, or 13-0, I think it was. And like, this game's over. And you never sense that right there. And they need to, in Saturday's final, I mean, they're going to have to be times 10 what they were early on in that State College game. That's how good I think St. Joe's Prep is playing right now. So compared to where they were, 6 weeks ago, when we're watching them lose to LaSalle in overtime, they're going to have to be firing on all cylinders. I didn't get a chance to talk to Ryan Lehmeyer yet. That's going to be on Wednesday, but I sort of sense that they are a little. I think they know what they're up against, but at the same time, I think they're going to try to find that similar fire that they had early in that State High quarter.
Okay, so Terry, we have you back. Terry,
you're on mute. Terry,
you're on mute. I don't think he can hear us either. Terry, can you hear us? Okay, so let's. You're on mute. Let's talk about Harrisburg's season here. They finished 11-3. They shared the Mid-Penn Commonwealth Division title with State College. They won their 4th straight District 3 6A championship. Beat McDevitt to capture, let's call it the mythical best team in the Harrisburg area accolades. Quarterback Jayon Lewis. They found a quarterback. A quarterback is born, and he has another season. and they return most of their key players. I mean, what's amazing, they lose Kymir Williams, Quincy Brandon, Nehemiah Ewell. Who am I missing from like the stars, like the super studs? Are there any players that I'm missing that are graduating?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Micah Chambers,
Okay,
defensive end.
there you go. There you go.
Um,
You're right. You're right.
so they're still losing some control. They might lose one lineman, I believe. It's Jayon Lee, I believe. But I will say this: and you see the difference that Kevin Brown makes when he's in the game. I mean, and I credit to Cal Everett. You talk about coaching, how he moved him around and he kept moving him around. And it paid dividends. But with him being out, they were actually able to build more depth along the line, offensive and defensive line, where you had freshmen in the rotation getting major time. And I just think they could really be dangerous next year. I mean, they're going to be dangerous. They're always going to be dangerous, but they could really be special.
Am I good now?
You're good.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Sorry about that.
I mean, Travis, I overuse the term, and Eric and Guy, I don't know if this is good for a sports guy to use. I use the term cakewalk sometimes because sports should always be hard, and they are always hard. I think Harrisburg's going to kind of cakewalk to their fifth straight district championship next year. I can't imagine anybody touching them next year. I mean,
you might as well crown them now. They returned. They returned too much.
Yeah, they returned.
I think the thing is their line. They're going to be. They should be. And now we're talking about kids. We're talking about a year away. But if they come back intact, they're going to be tremendous along both sides of the offensive and defensive line.
Right.
Now, of course, they're going to have to replace. Quincy Brandon's played 3 years. He played a lot of football. Kymir Williams, I think he was out there as a freshman. Those guys played a lot of football, and those are some really good, intelligent players. Very. Kymir Williams is a cerebral football player.
Right.
And those are going to be losses. So I don't want to underestimate those losses, but they do return a lot.
They return a lot.
Probably state championship or bust next year for them.
Absolutely. I think it's only fair. In my personal opinion, I think that they should come into the season as preseason ranked number 1.
Winning the state championship or bust, not just getting there or bust.
Yeah, this year I think it was getting there or bust. Next year I think it's winning it or bust.
I said, wait a minute. And I would, from being District 3.
You don't want to do that to him, Travis?
No. I mean, you would love to see that, but, let's be honest. Pittsburgh, not Pittsburgh Central Catholic, St. Joe's Prep, they have some youth on their team.
They'll be the favorite, St. Joe's Prep.
And you don't know who they're going to bring in. You're talking about a large metropolitan.
Yeah, we're not trying to set Cal and his guys up for if they failed if they don't win it. But
I'm not saying it because of that.
It is next year if there is a season. So let's.
But they'll have the athletes to go up against anybody in the state. I will say that
they should. Okay, Bishop McDevitt, and sorry if there's any McDevitt guys. We started with the Harrisburg game just because it was more interesting. The McDevitt game was very interesting for the McDevitt people, but it was kind of hard to watch because they were just so methodical. They were so methodical out of the gate, and things never really got any better for Pine Richland. 28-14, McDevitt over Pine Richland. Never a game I didn't think. McDevitt was just so much more talented all over the field, better athletes, just about all the way around. And I'm not saying it was easy, okay? Pine Richland, they make you play hard, and they play hard, and they're tough, and they're physical. But McDevitt was up 21-0 at the half and never looked back. Eric, did you watch that game?
I did not, not the whole way through, but saw most of it, yeah.
So Coach Jeff Wechter.
Mm-hmm. Talked to him today, actually.
Okay, good. You know that the way he operates, and he's got a, whoever thought this was going to be like one of those teams that was missing some stuff, and you could argue that it's not as good as some of his teams. This is a very good, well-rounded team.
Yeah, they
blocks well, tackles well. Go ahead.
They are, and he'll tell you last year that they weren't all the way comfortable with their offensive line because they had to replace so many guys up there, and then they bring 3 of those guys back this year. Their tackles are really good. I mean, their center Jude Slover, he's been tremendous for him this season. Weck will tell you that the guy that really flipped the script on this, and you go back to early in the season when they played that team from Maryland in the first game, and it didn't look like Stone Saunders was in sync with his wide receivers. But he said at some point, like right around Cumberland Valley, when Jonte Quick started really coming into his own, Wex said that the receivers in Stone just all of a sudden like clicked. They flipped the switch, and he said we really haven't become a team until about 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, and now he feels pretty good. I mean, I know that this could turn into a track meet on Friday night. I don't think both teams want it to get to that point. I think one wants to physically impose itself, and I say this with no disrespect, but when you watch Roman Catholic, Joe, they're like a 7-on-7 offense.
Are they really?
They really are. Like it's almost like watching them at one of these like camps during the season or during the run up to the season where, you know, it's just guys in shorts and tank tops throwing 7-on-7 routes and stuff. They're not there's not the polish there, I think, that you see on some of these other teams. And, you know, don't forget a couple things here. Number one, Saunders, I mean, yeah, he's a Division I quarterback. He is going to graduate in December. He's going to go to Kentucky. He's going to compete. He's going to sign with them on Wednesday. He's going to compete for that starting job next year. He's still going to go there, even though there's all this like vitriol around Mark Stoops and everything. But he's been working nonstop at kind of expanding his mind when it comes to offense. And I think that really is shown with some of these receivers. And I'll say one other thing real quick too. And I don't care if I get in trouble for saying this, because I really don't, quite frankly, give a rat's ass about the guy who said all the bad stuff about McDevitt on Twitter after the game on Friday. But Carlo Zavko's an idiot. And he's out there running his mouth about, you know, McDevitt this and McDevitt that. That guy was at McDevitt recruiting for Pitt a couple years ago and had no problem with who they played when they were a smaller classification. So Carlo could stick it for all I care.
Okay. Listen, we want to be the place where that stuff comes out. Okay. So
I hope he's watching. He can at me. He can come up to me Friday if he gets off his couch and actually goes. I don't care. He's an idiot for saying what he did.
I appreciate that. And Terrence, I know, Terry, I know that you watched the game too. Was it? I hate to put it this way, but it was for McDevitt. It was kind of a bend but don't break defense. They gave up 371 yards from scrimmage, and a lot of them were in the first 2.5, 3 quarters. It wasn't just like they were going into a prevent and letting Pine Richland throw the ball down the field, but they never really let Pine Richland get into deep into their zone. What'd you think of that McDevitt defense? He's gone. We're losing him. Travis, what do you think of the McDevitt defense?
I saw the game. And I'll tell you this. So last week when we talked, did the
Hello?
show, and I said that, you know,
Why can't I hear you?
I thought that Pine
Hello?
Richland.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Terry.
All right. I guess I can't really hear you guys though.
So I thought that Pine Richland might be able to control the line of scrimmage, keep the clock running, and might win the trenches. It was totally opposite. I think I think Eric kind of mentioned this about McDevitt's offensive line. They won the game in the trenches. Stone Saunders didn't have his best game. Pine Richland actually had pretty good coverage in the secondary. I know they got loose for the one long pass, but it was their running game. They controlled the line of scrimmage. Nazir Jones running the ball, you know, and you could tell, like when I could tell from, you know, Pine Richland, they weren't going to be able to consistently run on McDevitt. You could tell that early on, and then they weren't polished enough in the passing game to really pose a problem for McDevitt. So, and I'm thinking, okay, Pine Richland might win this game at the worst. It's going to be an even game. Really, McDevitt really dominated that game in the trenches. I mean, look at a Lucas Lawler. I mean, they dominated them at the line.
What did we say? I think the three of us, or a lot of people said, you know, McDevitt wins the game if they establish the running game. Okay, because we knew they had the passing game, and if a defense is going to try to shut McDevitt down this year, typically they're going to try to shut down their passing game. Well, if you do that, and Nazir Jones Davis rushes for 221 yards, McDevitt had a total of 257. Stone Saunders only had to throw the ball. He threw the ball 13 times. If you have that luxury, right, Eric? That's a luxury when you have the best quarterback, arguably in the state, that you don't even have to really go to that much. I mean, what kind of luxury is that, Eric?
Well, and, you know, again, you're also talking about a unit that just kind of came into its own, you know, 6 weeks ago. and hit its stride. So, I mean, I think you want to see them carry all the kind of momentum into those games. But at the same time, it's December. You got to run the football. You got to play defense. They did both. Lucas Lawler he was banged up early in the year, but he's been looking great, especially in the run up here in the playoffs. I think he's a really strong asset for that team. But, the other thing you can't avoid, this kind of goes back to my rant here a minute ago. Where was this team a year ago when they played Dallas? And remember, they didn't have a couple of transfers that played in that game against Dallas. They couldn't play in the playoffs because of the transfer rules.
Mm-hmm.
Where was this team at when they played their non-conference last year? And no disrespect to the Mid-Penn Keystone, but then they had to go and play the Mid-Penn Keystone schedule. You don't think that Commonwealth schedule, where the fifth best team in that division is probably the best team in any other Mid-Penn division? I mean, that's a fair argument to make.
That's
I think
a fair argument. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that level of competition completely changed how prepared they were for. They had a quarterfinalist in State College. They had a semifinalist in Harrisburg. They played. They had a division or a division rival who made districts in Cumberland Valley. Okay, CD was down this year. East made districts. Exactly. So they're playing all these playoff teams. How many years can you look at the Keystone when they were in there and say that they played that level of competition all those years they were in there?
Maybe Cedar Cliff on their better years was,
and they still beat them. They still handled them every time they ran into them. They had high scoring games, but they still handled them every single time.
So
here's the one. Let me say this: the one thing I noticed watching, being actually on the sidelines of some games, even a team like Chambersburg, Cumberland Valley, Cumberland Valley made a playoff. So even a team like Chambersburg, who didn't have the greatest year, but actually had a chance to make the playoffs late. These teams are big. They're big and they're physical. They're probably the only team that I would say probably wasn't big and physical was Carlisle. Everybody else had good size along the front line. And you're right, Eric. When you're facing that week in and week out, you run up against a Pine Ridge, and it's like a Mid-Penn Commonwealth game.
Yep.
Yeah, they saw nobody in the playoffs, including, and you guys have heard me say this all season long, I don't know that there was a better division or a better district than 5A in the WPIAL this season in the entire state. I mean, Bethel Park, Upper St. Clair, Peters Township, Pine Richland, they were all fantastic all season long. That was like a murderer's row of teams right there. But I just, when they get lined up against them, there's a big difference between lining up against State College every week or Harrisburg or a physical Cumberland Valley team, or even just playing 5A in the playoffs and then getting to that game when you play the Whippeal. And you can go back over their history and you can look at all the teams that they played when they were a 4A team like Cathedral Prep. Cathedral Prep steps out of their comfort zone and plays teams in Ohio or New York or Buffalo or whatever every year, but they don't see the level of competition until they get to that McDevitt game. And what happened most of the time when they ran into them? McDevitt kicked them out.
Right.
There's a couple years, obviously, where Cathedral Prep got through there, but it's just you have to prepare yourself by playing that level of competition. And for WEC and that staff, for them to jump up and play in a 6A conference, they said we can't do this 3-game stretch where we're playing these non-conference teams and then expect that to carry over 11 weeks later when we get into playoffs. We got to play that every week and be ready for the playoffs and play playoff style teams and games every single week. And to me, there's no bigger storyline in this game on Friday night than the fact that they played 6A predominantly all season long, handled their business. Sure, they lost. I mean, look at the 2 games they lost: semifinalists and a quarterfinalist in the state.
And the one was a track meet that I've said repeatedly, if McDevitt had about 3 or 4 more minutes, I think they would have beaten State
And if they were
College.
healthy, they weren't healthy in that game either.
Exactly.
That's another big factor.
Yeah. So
I actually like McDevitt to beat Roman because
I think so too.
I do too.
I don't like to pick games I do, but Travis, I agree with you. I think that they have to be considered the favorite in that game.
Am I good now, by the way?
Yeah, you sound a lot better now.
Yeah, sorry, man. I didn't plan or account for any of this.
That's okay.
Can I cut in at some point now?
You want to talk about McDevitt? That's where we're at. Okay,
yeah. So my takeaway from the McDevitt Pine Richland game, I just want to start off by saying this. Congratulations to McDevitt. If I probably did a poll in general, I would think prior to that game, I would say most people would probably have Pine Richland winning that game prior to what happened on Friday. If I did a poll, I would think that would be the case. Reason being is because a lot of people, including myself, was unsure about McDevitt's physicality. And I must say, if anything, the takeaway from that game, we left away with this McDevitt team is pretty physical. I mean, they established the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. The run game was very successful. Controlled the chains. Uh, Nazir Jones Davis, he looked really good. And cold weather trying to tackle him, that's an issue. He's fast, he has great size, and he runs hard. He really runs hard.
Yeah.
To add that with, before I got cut off, Eric mentioned the passing game. Jonte Quick coming into his own now, being a big time playmaker out there at the wide receiver. He had a 68-yard reception that went for a touchdown. I finished the game with
three receptions for 117 and 2 touchdowns. How do you get more clean and efficient than that?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
3 for 117 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and you add that with Dominic Davis Ellis as well at the right receiver position. I mean, this offense is looking really, really explosive, which we knew, but it really showed that cold weather football, they're a cold weather football team. They can get it done. So I was, happy to see that because I did question that coming into this game, like, would they be able to handle the physicality of Pine Richland? And they answered.
Yes,
So congratulations to them. I know you guys talked a little bit about Roman, and I have to side with you guys going into this game as well. I think McDevitt should get the edge in this game. I think if they play like they played versus Pine Richland, I think that they have a really, really good shot at adding another state championship to their school district.
Yep.
Well, school.
We agree. I think we all agree with that. How about this one? And then we'll just this is the last one we'll spend a few minutes on. Then we'll just kind of go down the rest of the games. We have to talk about Lampeter Strasburg 20, Thomas Jefferson 16. Eric, you knew. I think we were all texting while that was going on. And I mean, I guess kind of like borderline shocked is how I felt about it,
Yeah.
Until I started watching it. When I turned it on, I saw the score. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? It was a true tale of two halves. 2 halves of football. Thomas Jefferson was up 16-3 at the half.
Yeah.
Lampeter Strasburg outscored them 17-0 in the second
17-0.
And it wasn't fluky. It wasn't like the ball was bouncing all over the place. Lampeter Strasburg just controlled the line of scrimmage in the second half. I watched the whole second half. 155 rushing yards on the day for Lampeter Strasburg, 82 passing yards, a total of only 237. That typically doesn't score you 20 points and win a semifinal game against the Thomas Jefferson. But that's all they needed because they controlled the line of scrimmage. Thomas Jefferson running back Tyler Eber, he had 206 rushing yards. Guys, he was only 31 yards under Lampeter Strasburg's total, okay? And I know that that's not how you decide who wins a football game, but I'm just kind of trying to paint a picture here. Again, Lampeter Strasburg, both sides of the ball. Every time Thomas Jefferson needed 3 yards or 7 yards or 2 yards, they couldn't get it. They just couldn't get it. So, Eric, talk a little bit about the Thomas Jefferson team that you got a chance to watch all year long. You got to unmute yourself.
I was kind of surprised by the outcome of that game, but I think once you start peeling back the layers of that Lampeter Strasburg team, I mean, you hear this story, it seems like all the time with teams that make it to a final. This is a group of kids that have been playing football together forever. Their offensive line is as tight as it gets. There really is no panic. I think that going through their game with Wyomissing the week before, really helped them. They got a physical team. They can run the ball very well. Don Brown, physical runner. I mean, Victor Ridenour loves him, loves the way he runs the football. And he said to me earlier today, because I asked him about what he said to him at halftime, he was like, you can't yell at him. You can't scream at him. You just basically got to go in there and pick it up. And he said that they felt a sense of urgency in the second half. It kicked in, and I mean, away they went. They're a tight knit group of guys that have all come up together that are now it's finally paid off, and their story is pretty interesting because most of these guys on that senior class for them all played special teams as sophomores, and they thought it was important. Now they'll cherry pick maybe guys who they think might be like a step ahead and put them on those special teams units there, but they, for the most part, they just want to get them on the field. They want to get them the varsity experience. They want them to get a taste of it, kind of pick their brain like as to what they, how they feel about playing varsity football. And then generally after that, they start cracking the starting lineup. But these guys all youth football, these guys all special teams. I mean, it started with basics on, the third unit of a football team, and now they're playing for a state title. I was pretty surprised by the outcome initially, and then when I kind of started diving into these guys a little bit to get ready for Thursday night, I was like, okay, well this now makes a lot of sense. I mean, TJ really wasn't, and I hate to say this, we didn't get the 4A tournament in the WPI that I think a lot of us wanted. I mean, Montour got knocked out early, Quippa got knocked out, TJ knocked them out, but we didn't get that tournament. I think that tournament was also a little misseeded out here. And I really think that they need to review how they pick these brackets for District 7, but that's a story for another time. But I don't think that they got the level of test that many wanted them to have getting ready, and they might have looked a little bit better than what they are.
So please accept my apologies, Eric. I forgot to mention you are the play-by-play guy for NFHS for all 6 title games, right?
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
Okay. I should have mentioned that right out of the gate. We were already kind of on the move when you jumped in, and but all 6 games, man, that's a lot of work. And anybody at home, you can't beat it. I mean, I think it's $12.99 for a month. You pay for a month, and if you don't want to watch anything else, you get 6 games for $12.99. And you're not going to find anybody better than Eric Thomas at play-by-play. And I mean that. I
appreciate that.
I say it when he's in front of me. I say it when he's not in front of me. And I just think the world of you as a play-by-play guy. Do you have anybody in the booth with you? Do you have an analyst with you?
Yeah, actually, Jamie Thomas is going to do 5 to 6 with me, the former McDevitt lineman who played for the Indianapolis Colts. And
okay,
then
good.
There's a guy who plays quarterback at Penn State named Bo Perbula. His older brother Cade is going to do the 4A game with me on Thursday night.
I see Ford Chapman has worked, and Gary Sutton have both worked with Cade, and Cade does a really nice job.
Ford actually gave me the recommendation. I hit him up a couple weeks ago and said, "What do you think of his work?" And he said he's incredible. You'd love doing it with him. And I got his number, asked him, and he said yes right away.
So NFHS, that's like Nancy, Frank, Harry, Susan.com. Go on there. I mean, I get it year round, $79.99 because I like basketball too. But you can get all 6 games for 1 month subscription price, and if you got to drop it or want to drop it, you can. But check out Eric and his crew. So let's move on to.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about Lampeter Strasburg a little bit more.
Sure. Absolutely.
Like you mentioned, it was a tale of 2 halves. If you were watching that first half, you might have even turned the game off because TJ was just so dominant up front and on the D line. So it was kind of like mind-boggling watching how the second half played out. You would have thought the team that's dominating the second half was TJ, but it wasn't. It was Lampeter Strasburg, and that's ultimately why they won the game. It was very, very impressive. How they, got the kids to still be in that game. They, without doubt, didn't think that they couldn't win the game because ultimately they won the game.
They really did everything right at the right times.
Right. And I also want to, give a shout out to, the District 3 4A because I think the games that they played prior to that really helped in this situation. You mentioned them playing Wyomissing in the district championship game. They played Wyomissing and Twin Valley combined they played them twice in a span of 5 weeks. Those 2 programs are quality teams. They're both
really
good
teams, yeah.
And I think it ultimately, helped them, in this game versus TJ as they, were able to get it done and win and advance to their first ever state title game, which is huge for that program. Because, they don't get too much shine, but people should know like this Lampeter Strasburg program is definitely one of the top programs in District 3, period.
Absolutely, yeah.
They've
actually hung with McDevitt a couple of times. I think they might even have beaten them once, but they were competitive with them a couple of times, and they were years that McDevitt had pretty good teams too. So
yes, so yeah, and then I mentioned that to a couple people in our chat that this team is accustomed to usually going up against McDevitt in the district finals. So they've seen the athletes the attempt to prepare for McDevitt.
Right.
So coming into this game, I don't think that they were thinking like we don't have a shot. Like, no, they really felt that they could win, and ultimately they did.
Yeah.
So
you're saying the same. It's not a theory, but the same thing Eric said about McDevitt. You put them up against some good competition, especially later in the season, and that really gets you kind of primed for when it really matters most. So, well,
right.
best wishes to. Okay, congratulations, Coach Cal Everett and your Harrisburg Cougars on a great season. Best wishes to Coach Jeff Wechter and your Bishop McDevitt Crusaders. Bring home gold. Bring home another trophy. And Lampeter Strasburg, good luck and best wishes to you as well as you go up against Bonner Prendergast. So let's move into 1A, the team that I kind of had, and I'm wrong a lot. I say that all the time.
Quick, I just want to throw this out there.
Yeah,
and because Eric mentioned this about and you mentioned as well, controlling the line of scrimmage. Just think about the McDevitt game, Lampeter Strasburg, how important it is in the trenches, and that's why I think Lampeter Strasburg is going to win a state championship, because they're going to control the line of scrimmage.
And they're kind of up against it. We'll talk about Bonner Prendergast here in a moment.
They're going to be mad at me in district out there in Philly.
That's okay. That's all right.
Line of scrimmage.
We're here to be honest with our feelings. Bishop Guilfoyle, they're representing the East in 1A. It doesn't really matter who's East and West, I guess, because they move them around so that there's an even amount of schools on either side. But I kind of latched on to Guilfoyle midway through the season, and that's when there was still like 6 or 7 teams left, sort of vying, when you had Clareton and Westinghouse and a bunch of and I know I'm leaving out a few, Fort Cherry, but their only loss was to Penn Cambria, who just lost the 3A semifinal game to Avonworth. That's not
by
a bad
point,
loss,
by the way, by one freaking point.
Not a bad loss at all for Guilfoyle. Guilfoyle has 4 state championships in 5 appearances. They've won it in 2014, 15, 16, and 21, and lost it in 2019. And they're playing Port Allegheny, District 9. District 9's never won a state championship, y'all. Port Allegheny just knocked Fort Cherry all around. They beat them 46-8. And Port Allegheny, first trip to a state championship game. They are 14-0 in the season. And let's just say, does anybody know anything about either of these, more than that I just said about either of these teams? These are a District 6 versus a District 9 team. Eric?
You're right here, buddy. It's all done already.
That was kind of a rhetorical question.
We're all ready to go.
So what do you know?
Port Allegheny really has run the ball well. Aiden Bliss has over 3,000 yards rushing this season, 53 touchdowns.
Wow.
They are a team that, they allow about 18 points a game. So, I mean, you can score on them, but I will tell you that most of those points have come at garbage time. So it's been when these games are wide over, long over. I mean, their offense is, 377 yards rushing a game. They won't throw the ball much. Brennan Philhart, who's their quarterback, is completing 73% of his passes, but he's only attempted 61 passes all year. So, I mean, it's a true power running team. If there's one hiccup with them, they're not very deep. So that's something that Guilfoyle can try to exploit, because Guilfoyle is a little bit – Guilfoyle actually, for a single A school, can actually put together a full 2 deep, which is pretty impressive. So
that's impressive.
They've got some gaudy numbers, Guilfoyle does. And then, by the way, they also have another 1,000-yard running back in Tristan Kaiser. So, I mean, they are a 1-2 punch of running the football. That's what they're going to try to do in this game. They're going to try to outmuscle Guilfoyle up front. They got a big offensive line, guys like You So Young, 250 pounds. Gavin McCurvey, who doesn't play, is 325. They got some big dudes on their line. Carson Neely, who's one of their tackles, 275 pounds. So for a single A school with not a lot of kids, they still have some size. And this is going to be completely contrasting styles in the game too, because Guilfoyle is going to throw the football. I mean, they will throw the football a ton, and they will try to throw the football into Hamilton Gates. 38 touchdowns this season. 19 rushing, 19 receiving.
Wow.
Closing in on 100 receptions this year. Chase Kissel's a fantastic quarterback. His brother Jake is a very good backup, but he's also a really good tight end. Guilfoyle's physical. And this probably, if it's not like a ball control type of game, has potential to be maybe the best game of the 6. I don't think that there are two teams that come into play this weekend that have had two more impressive wins than Guilfoyle over Westinghouse and then what Port Allegheny did last week to Fort Cherry.
Yeah, that's you're right. And you know what? I know you weren't trying to sell us anything there, but my juices are flowing for that game now. That really sounds
should be
like
good. Yeah,
that sounds like a really good game to me.
I was supposed to do that Guilfoyle Westinghouse game, and then when they messed around with the time and the site, they moved it because Guilfoyle couldn't get to Natrona Heights to play the game on that Friday night, so they moved it to Saturday. I was unavailable that day. And went back and just looked at a little bit of it. And, I mean, I turned it off within 12. Westinghouse made it a game. I mean, they did come back and they had 2 long passes. But if you take away Westinghouse's 4 big plays in that game, which were all over 50 yards, it's 71 yards of offense otherwise.
So Guilfoyle, by virtue of the 21-6 win over Muncie, I wanted to mention that that's who they played. The quarterfinal game was against Westinghouse. So they beat Muncie by essentially 2 touchdowns. So, you know, somebody could stick with them because Muncie did, I guess. You know, it wasn't a blowout, that's for sure.
No, that was a 21-0 game. That game was Muncie's a power run team that was 21-0, and that game was for all intent and purposes over at that.
Okay, so there we go. So that's why we have you here, Eric. Okay, so 2A, we got Central. We got Troy versus Central Clarion. Troy's representing the East for what it's worth. Central Clarion the West. 2 undefeated teams, 2 programs who have never been to a state championship game. So something's got to give here. Either Troy or Central Clarion are going to get their first championship. Once again, Central Clarion's out of District 9. So District 9 has 1A and 2A, 2 opportunities to bring home their first ever in 36 years state championship for their home district. We've been talking about Troy all year on the show just because they look so dominant. Their wins have been so dominant. The other side of Troy, I think, is that they didn't play a whole lot of competition up there in District 4 land. And Central Clarion, they might have played a little better competition. Eric, what do you have on this one? Hey, you guys, Travis and Terrence, jump in if you think you can. I can't. That's why I'm kind of turning it over here.
I mean – This Troy offense is good. I don't know how good District 4 was as a whole. I've been kind of waiting to see this. And, I mean, what they did, what you can gauge them by is what they did on the road in Delaware. You know, we've heard Dave talk about that this season, 8-0 or 8-3, whatever the final was there. And I think also I know that they were having a down year and did, but just to mentally get over the hump of having to go through Southern Columbia and do it twice and make both of them completely non-competitive games. I mean, I say this like kind of tongue in cheek, but you know, teams needed to get Southern this year because I think they have another 2 or 3 year run coming here in the next few years. But just from what I've told, but
I've heard the same.
Yeah, base it on those 2 things. And I mean, that's what else do you need as far as competition from them? I think. I mean, District 4 traditionally isn't strong. I mean, when Mount Carmel's good, they're good. When Jersey Shore's been good. Danville's been good. You know, Southern, of course, has been great. Shamokin was good this year. But, I mean, as a whole, you could say maybe it's up. But, you know, generally, a lot of those teams, I mean, this team is another one that's been brewing for a while. I mean, they thought they had a shot at building a state championship team 3 or 4 years ago, and here they are.
You know, so that's 2A, guys. Unless Travis or Terry want to say anything about that.
The only thing I can say about Troy, kind of like what Eric said, is that, you know, the Troy guys, the Troy fans, they've been pumping this team all year long.
From the very beginning.
From the very beginning, they said, this is our year. We're going to take care of Southern Columbia. They made that clear
Yeah, yes, they did.
from the jump, and they were right. They were
Yeah.
right. And it's hard for me not to pick them to be the favorite coming into this game, just based off of that alone. Because you taking out Southern Columbia, mind you, this was a down year for Southern Columbia. They're young. They're a younger team. They were a younger team this year, but just to beat them the way that they did, like that gotta count for something.
Right.
It has to.
Okay, so that's 2A, guys. And this is an interesting storyline here in 3A. Okay, Northwestern Lehigh. I'm sorry, out of District 11, 15-0, first trip to the state championship game.
Second.
Is this their second?
They lost last year to Bell Vernon. Yeah, they lost last year to Bell Vernon.
You know what? I do have 0-1. Okay, I'm so sorry. Yeah, they got it handed to them too, right? Last year.
Yeah,
but,
if you remember Quentin Martin right off the bat, he went nuts early on.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, so yeah.
Yep.
I stand corrected. Second trip, haven't won one. District 11, Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton area, for those who are unaware, they have not won a state championship in 14 seasons. 2010, Allentown Central Catholic 28, McDevitt 27. And that's a good football area. It's surprising that they haven't won one, and I understand why they haven't won one in 6A or 4A before it turned into 6A. With some of those studs, but this could be their first one in 14 years, and they're playing an Avonworth team who might be District 7's saving grace. They might be their only championship because Pitt Central Catholic's going to be up against it against St. Joe's Prep. District 7, fellas, has not been without a state championship in 32 years. The last time they did not win one championship was 1992. So how about that storyline? You have one trying to win for the first time for their district in 14 years versus one trying to just get a W for their district. And Eric, tell us, we haven't talked a whole lot about Avonworth. They came in as a 5 seed, and their losses. Here's another interesting storyline or subplot. Their 12-3 are Avonworth. Their losses were all blowouts. They got blown out by Aliquippa, Thomas Jefferson, and Beaver. Not often can a team say, "Here we are at the state championship. We got blown out 3 times this year, but here we're going to try to win a title." What's up with this Avonworth team?
Yeah, that Beaver team, a lot of people thought was going to be a good team. Remember, they clipped Westinghouse early in the year too at that Wolverina showcase.
Yeah.
Just didn't have enough the rest of the way. It's an Avonworth team that's gotten better and better as the year has gone on. Central Valley was a hot pick for a lot of a lot of people in Whippeal. They couldn't put it together all season long. They played a tough schedule, arguably, up there with the teams in 5A because of going through TJ and also Aliquippa. And you kind of have to play recency bias a little bit because when they played Beaver was still one of those teams that a lot of people thought was going to make some noise, but they've gotten better and better as the season's gone on. They play pretty good defense. This is a Northwestern Lehigh team that brings a chunk of their team back from last year. They run the ball very well. They had a pretty physical offensive line. Didn't play particularly great against Bell Vernon last year. A lot of teams didn't. Obviously they're the best player in the state on their team in Quentin Martin, but who I think is going to be an absolute star when he gets his chance at Penn State after Singleton and Katron Allen leave. But this is going to be an interesting game. I think a lot has to be said for teams that have the experience in getting to a final. I think there's just a different mentality when you've been there. Like you look at the times that Aliquippa has been there, and okay, McDevitt handled them a couple of years ago. When they came back last year, there was no way they were losing that game. You go through that one time and you kind of get that taste of losing it, and I think that really stings more than sometimes coaches lead you to believe. And I don't know about you guys. When my team loses, the losses stick with me more than the wins do. Sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that team has had a lot of that going on this year, and they've channeled that all through their play to get back to this point. To say that they're WPIL saving grace Avonworth, I think they're going to have a tough time in this game. I think Northwestern Lehigh might be able to eke that thing out.
I think that was kind of unbelievably superb point. You kind of get acclimated with everything, even if you lose by being there the prior season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they know the bus trip in, they know the locker rooms, they know everything about. They just came out on the wrong end of it last year, so I don't think anybody would argue against that point. That
No,
you
that's a
know,
great point.
it really is. It really is. So, you know, another game. That's 3 games now that I would have a hard time. And if you guys know me, I don't really do a whole lot of predictions and stuff like that. But I really wouldn't know where to go with any of these. I would like Troy by a little bit, I think, in 2A. So you got Lampeter. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing, and I will say this. Sorry, Whoopio fans of District 7, but I think that streak ends. I don't think I
so,
don't think you get any teams that that win. I just don't. I don't think that's going to happen.
Listen here, I got a good trivia question. It's not easy. It's pretty tough. Avonworth is 0-1. They are 0-1 in state championship finals, championship games. Do you guys know who they lost to and who they lost to? What year? What was the score? Anything? Just give me any part
Southern
of that.
Columbia?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
very
of course
good.
it was dumb. I should have guessed though.
Very good.
Yeah, that was just a couple years ago, wasn't it?
It was
2000,
just it was
2019.
19. Yeah. Ding,
Yep.
ding, ding. It's 2 for 3. 2 for 2.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
when
good.
in
Very
doubt,
good, Eric.
when in doubt, guess Southern Columbia.
That was
Yeah.
the
known.
Fleming year. That was the last Julian Fleming team, I think.
Yes, it was. And
Oh
guess
yes.
what?
Ooh, that was not close. That game was not close.
74-7. 74-7.
Yeah, I think that's
remember
when.
that. I remember that. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that's when the entire state had enough of Southern Columbia after that game.
I remember after watching, I said Southern Columbia could have competed for the top. Like
that was one of those years.
Clearly.
I
The
don't know.
generational team.
The
That was a
Halliday
generational
kids.
team.
You had Fleming. You had Jake Davis, who was. Remember Davis, the other corner, had like 11 interceptions that year because nobody wanted to throw at Fleming. I mean, they had everything.
Yeah, yeah, that
So
team was
anyway,
loaded.
Let's give Eric a ding, 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 ding. He got 2 out of 3, and that score would have been hard to get. You got enough.
I would have got it after a minute or two.
Yeah.
I probably would have said like 88-7 or something.
I believe you would have.
If they wanted to, it could have been.
It probably could have been. You're right.
Okay, so we talked about Lampeter Strasburg once again, 14-0, and I forgot to mention they had been knocked out by. I'm kind of going in reverse here. Thomas Jefferson, it was worth mentioning, knocked them out a handful of years ago in the state semifinals. So that's the closest they've ever gotten. They're going up against a Bonner Prendergast team that's 12 and District 12, the 1 seed, 11-2. How about these 2 losses, guys? Their only 2 losses to LaSalle College and St. Joe's Prep, and they're a 4A team. That's just the way they play down there in the Catholic League. You know, you don't see kind of that cross. Let's call it cross classification matchups up this way too often at all. First trip to this final. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams out of the first 8 that have never won one, and 5 of those 6, all except for Northwestern Lehigh, have never been to one. So this is exciting.
I like that.
This is really
It's nice.
Yeah. Eric Bonner.
Well, I don't know if just parity. Because you look at some of those scores. I don't know if just parity.
It's just some teams like Southern Columbia. We just said they kind of took the year off. They were young.
It's just different teams somewhat.
Yeah. Which is nice. Which is nice.
Yeah.
You know, I would like to see something different in 6A.
Can this be
we're going to be waiting for a while.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
What does Lampeter Strasburg have to do here? I have a feeling that Prendergast is probably very athletic. And they play out of District 12. They're a city school. There's not too many 3 yards in a cloud of dust teams down in that Philly Catholic League, right, Eric?
No, they're a really, really fast team. That's something that they're a little concerned about with LS is the team speed on this Bonner team. Fat Campbell, the quarterback, is great. He really last year actually split time last year. And remember, they got beat by Dallas by a point in their playoff loss, which then set up the McDevitt game. So Dallas went through Bonner and then McDevitt. We all thought we might see Bonner and McDevitt last year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Could have been insane if that happened. Lampeter's going to have to control the big play because Jaleel Hill, who's going to West Virginia, Jeremiah Coleman, the 2 receivers, they are outstanding. and they're really going to have to limit the big play. And then if Bonner wants to run the ball, he didn't get enough credit, but Mick Johnson, their tailback, had a big game against Roman earlier this year. I think he went for like 150 yards against them and 4 touchdowns. So it's going to have to be the big playability. It's going to have to be, don't get too far behind. I mean, at some point, you can't spot these teams too much. There's a difference between spotting why I'm missing a lead, TJ a lead, and then this team a lead. So LS is going to have to be careful. They can't let the big play happen. They're going to have to get to Fat Campbell, and which, by the way, probably my favorite name of the whole weekend, Fat Campbell.
I was just going to ask you, is that Fat? Is that FATT or just
his real name is Noel, but they call him Fat because apparently he was a rather large baby. So
okay,
which is ironic because he's only like 5'5".
He's like 5. He's like 5'7". He's a starting quarterback, like 5'7". They don't give you any heights or weights on the Bonner roster, unfortunately. So we don't have an official scale for Mr. Campbell. But I can't wait for just 2.5 hours on Friday night to keep referring to somebody as Fat Campbell.
That's the hands down. I don't care who else has a great nickname. That's the nickname of the weekend.
That's the best one of the whole.
Yeah,
he doesn't care that you call him that either. That's the best part.
You usually have to have to be ready to fight over that.
I saw Bonner against LaSalle, and I'm definitely not comparing Lampeter Stroudsburg to LaSalle, and that's no disrespect to Lampeter Stroudsburg. It's just a different, level of football. And clearly, Bonner has the athletes. I mean, they can play 6A with their athletes.
Yep.
One concern I had was looking at the guys up front, and you can have great athletes, but if you can't control that line of scrimmage, it can be problematic.
The part of their line is huge. That's going to be another problem for LS in this game. They got some bookends that are massive on Bonner's line.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily the size. I just think I got a good feeling about Lampeter Stroudsburg with their line, actually. I understand the size, but I just watch them. I think it's going to be a good game.
There's a lot to be said for technique, and I mean that, especially when the kids have been playing together for so many years, like Eric said. That's meaningful.
I think Eric hit it on the head when he said, you can't to win this game. You can't spot a team 14 points, 17 points at half. You can't. Lampeter Stroudsburg has to come into this game immediately and take control of the line of scrimmage. If they can do that, I think they have a shot. If they can't, this game might get away. But if they're able to establish it, play ball control a little bit, shorten possessions for Bonner, I think they got a shot. Get it to the fourth quarter, I think they have a shot.
It's okay to get down a little bit because that's football. That happens, kind of like Southern Columbia got down against Westinghouse last year, but they kept themselves within striking distance.
Right.
Here's the thing for Lampeter Stroudsburg on offense. Watch what they do, how many yards they gain on first down. Because you don't want to be 2nd and 10.
That's a good point.
Third and 8. So I'm going to go to my Eagles yesterday, watching the Eagles game, and I'm glad they did it. Watching Baltimore, Derrick Henry, 4 and 5 yards every first down. Then they went to the pass. So try to gain 3 and 4 yards on first down. Keep that ball on the ground. And as I thought that what Pine Richland might be able to do to McDevitt is shorten the game. So I'm going to go with that strategy again, shorten the game.
Just keep it up till it works, right?
Yeah.
All right. So there's 4 out of 6. We're not going to really touch on McDevitt a whole lot because we already did with Roman Catholic. Just worth noting, Roman Catholic, this is their first trip to a state championship game. And I wanted to mention they got some really good losses too, if we can call it that. I call it that. Their losses, Roman Catholic, are to DeMatha, Bonner Prendergast, St. Joe's Prep, and LaSalle College. I mean, other than LaSalle College, who only lost 1 game this year, and that was to and St. Joe's Prep. They all kind of beat each other down there, all those other Catholic League schools. So Roman Catholic hasn't taken like a really bad loss all year. And McDevitt, 13-2 losses to Harrisburg and State College. McDevitt is they're 2-4 in state championship games. They have wins in 95 to Burrell and Aliquippa in 2022. They lost in 2010 to Allentown Central Catholic, to Archbishop Wood in 11 and 13, and to Aliquippa in 2021. So McDevitt is kind of like been there, done that kind of football program, right? You know, they're not they're not uncomfortable. It's not uncommon for them to be there. And Coach Jeff Wechter's been there a bunch of times. All of those were Jeff Wechter's teams, except for 95 was Ford Chapman's team. So no, yeah,
You're correct.
That's right.
Yeah,
that
you're
was,
right.
that was a double A. That was a double A in 95.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, he's Weck knows what he's doing there. So I like to say drum roll, please, but I think we already. Usually, I'm like a kind of like a 6A guy, and I love the big schools, so to speak. But I don't know if this is kind of like the big game here, St. Joe's Prep.
I think the 5A game is, to be honest.
It might be. That might be the game. St. Joe's Prep 12-2. After kind of a tough loss to, I mean, they lost to St. Edward early in the season out of Lakewood, Ohio. But that's a national team, or at least a regional team, St. Edward. But ever since that LaSalle loss, which was kind of, we talked about it enough. That was a yucky loss for St. Joe's Prep. They're just playing really well. They've been here 10 times before. They've won 8 out of 10. Only losses to Pine Richland in 2017, Mount Lebanon in 2021. Pitt Central Catholic, they've been around a lot too. They've been in 7 games, 7 state championship games. They've won 4 and lost 3. Their losses this year, we've talked about the loss to Pine Richland, and they also lost to St. Francis in Baltimore, Maryland. First 2 games of the season, right, Eric?
Correct. Yep.
And you sat on this show and you said, don't put a whole lot of stock into that, fellas. They're going to be okay. I think they'll be around when it counts, and then they are. They are.
I'm going to go against the grain here, and I'm actually going to tell you I'm picking Pitt Central Catholic to win.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay. I
like
think that I honestly just think that this is a St. Joe's team that if you're going to get them, you have to get them right now.
Yeah.
Because
Agreed.
I mean, there's something about quarterback play that I find sort of fascinating, because we've seen in title games, like we've seen Stone Saunders not play a good title game against Aliquippa the first time, and they almost won that game too. But he wasn't the sharpest in that game. He comes back the next year, he shreds them. There's something to be said in the 5A game for a guy at the most important position who's been there, done that, and this is going to be his 3rd state title game. So I think that's why McDevitt could be a clear favorite. Maybe not clear, but I think they could be a favorite in that game just based on the fact that 2 of their biggest pieces, Lawler and Saunders, both played on those other teams. But the reason I think Central Catholic can win this game is twofold. Number one, everybody's been talking about Charlie Folk and the ride that he's been on since that LaSalle game. And I get it. The kid plays with a chip on his shoulder, and he was fantastic the second time they played. He's been great. He outdueled Joe McLeish at Imatep when they played him a couple weeks ago. And I thought that was going to be a test for him too, and it wasn't. I think Central has played tougher competition. I think that helps them. I think going through Harrisburg and State College prepares them. I think they can throw the football. I think they have as equally hot a quarterback right now. I think they can run the football with Elijah Faulkner. And I think the one difference between this team this year and North Allegheny last year, and that North Allegheny offensive line just mowed people down all year long. Last year, this year, everything, a lot of the holdovers. I think Central Catholic's offensive line is more physical. And something just tells me that lightning's finally going to strike there. The clock's going to finally hit midnight for St. Joe's. They're going to be back next year. They're going to be back the year after that. They're going to be back the year after that. They're going to be back when I'm 75 years old and Tim Rokin's got a walker, okay, right, with Marvin Harrison's great-grandson probably.
Yeah.
But I just something just tells me that this is going to be the Vikings night. I don't know what it is, but haven't really gotten into it too much yet. I love some of these guys on St. Joe's. Like Anthony Sacca is a tremendous player to watch. I grew up idolizing his dad when he played at Penn State. So, I mean, he is just a handful at linebacker. They've got so much talent. They run the ball so well. I think St. Joe's runs the ball better than maybe they ever have, to be honest with you. But
yeah,
I just got a weird feeling about this one. Something about the weekend where I sit back and I look at all 6 of these games. I'm just like, man, I don't know if any of these games are going to be any good except like one of them. But then usually when you feel that way, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go the Costanza here
Okay.
and just go with
Yeah.
my opposite instinct.
Just say the
I hope
opposite.
I hope you're right, Eric. I really, really do because I would
Yeah,
love to see a great game at the highest
That's
classification.
I mean that's really all we want. We
Yeah,
want
that's all
6A
I
to come
want.
right down to the wire.
That's it.
Exactly.
I would too. It would be great to see a great game, but I only saw St. Joe's Prep against in the first LaSalle game. But worries me is what you said is if this is the best team that St. Joe's has that you've seen running the ball, I think you can run the ball
That's
on Central
problem.
Catholic. I think if that's the case, you can run the ball on Central. And I'm
Yeah,
just going to from what I saw, you can definitely run the ball and you can control the line of scrimmage.
That's a big problem. And remember when Kyle McCord didn't play a couple years for them and they just pounded Kobe Burrell. I mean, their offense, he got behind their offensive line and they just beat the hell out of teams up front. And it sort of seems like they can do the same thing. I mean, they obviously have a healthy starting quarterback right now, but it seems like they're kind of in that mold. But I like this kid a little bit better than Burrell when he was there. So I don't know, but I gotta go with that opposite instinct. Talk to me at 6:57 on Saturday night down in the field when I've watched the warm-ups, and I'll probably be like, there is no chance this is going to be a game, but who knows?
It would be great to see a good 6A game. It really
That would be.
Two things. The keys to beating a St. Joe's Prep team. First, you have to be able to run and pass. If you can only run, you have no shot.
That's right.
You have no shot. But if you can pass, now we can work with something. And the second thing, the team District 7 seems to be the only district that can beat these guys.
Yeah.
So I'll give them a slight chance based off of that alone.
Eric, you see what happens when you bring smarter people than yourself onto your show? I can just sit here and just kind of moderate. Great points.
Listen,
Terry.
Joe, if you are there Saturday night, just find me about 20 minutes before the game.
Okay.
And after I've watched like the O lines and the quarterbacks warm up and been at midfield and talked to both coaches and listened to some of the John back and forth, find me at like 6:40 or whatever on Saturday night, and I'll have a better feel for it. But
you might request the mulligan.
I mean, seriously, I might ask to tee it up again. I might do a breakfast ball.
Okay.
Who was the coach who said it was over at warmups?
Oh no. Well, I said that the kid from St. Joe's Prep. I don't know if this is the story you're talking about. The last time they beat Harrisburg, there was an offensive lineman from St. Joe's Prep, and I heard the interview. Dave Berman interviewed him, and he said after the first series, when he walked off the field, and the guy who he was playing across the line from on Harrisburg stayed on the field, he said, "I knew it was over." He said, "I knew that guy wasn't going to be able to handle me because he was playing both ways." Is that the story you're talking about, or no?
No, you did mention that. That is a tremendous advantage.
Yeah, I mean, St. Joe's Prep. That's a great point. We didn't make tonight. Is that guys are playing one way, and
I saw an article where a coach said after the game he knew the game was over.
I saw the same thing.
I've seen that somewhere too.
I thought I saw the same thing too, and I just sort of like in passing, and I was just like, "Wait a minute, what?"
I think it was a coach from District 1, if I'm not mistaken.
It may have been who they
Parkland?
played this.
So I
Maybe
just
Parkland, maybe Downingtown. I don't know.
I just told a story for no reason. Sorry.
One said that.
I just Joe. Actually, you broke news there. You mentioned that Berman interviewed somebody other than a Mifflin County person.
Listen, it was a great interview too. It was a fabulous
He does Chester. He does Chester.
Yeah, the kid was great. The subject was awesome, and Berman did a great job. So let's just recap this, and we will. I think Travis and I are going to be over there together, Eric. So without getting in your way, we might stop up and say hi.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Before the game kicks off. Let's just recap. First appearances, we have 8 teams total without titles. 6 making their first appearance. Port Allegheny in 1A, Troy in 2A, Central Clarion in 2A, Lampeter Strasburg in 4A, Bonner Prendy in 4A, Roman Catholic in 5A. That's 6 total. Then 2 teams are 0-1 in final games, Avonworth and Northwestern Allegheny. So that's exciting, guys. All year we've been saying, man, let's just hope some new blood comes in. And last year we had 4 repeating champions, I believe. Yeah, everybody except for McDevitt, and who else didn't repeat last year? I forget, but we had a lot of repeat winners last year. Bishop Guilfoyle, they're looking for their 5th title in 6 appearances. McDevitt looking for their 3rd and 7 appearances. St. Joe's Prep looking for their 9th and 11 appearances. And Pitt Central Catholic looking for their 5th and 8 appearances. And the last thing I'll mention, Bishop McDevitt, they are looking to become the 12th Mid-Penn Conference team from 6 different schools to win a state championship. Camp Hill won one in '88, the first year of the tournament.
At Shippensburg University.
Yes, very good. That's the only game that was ever played at Shippensburg University.
And they need to go back there, but they need lights and they need donors. That's the thing. That'd be the perfect spot for them.
It wasn't even all 4 games. It was just the single A game. Cumberland Valley in '92, Scotland School, the now defunct Scotland School in '92. We had 2 in '92. McDevitt
need a District 9 team, by the way. Smethport, I believe, wasn't it?
Smethport, yes, Smethport area. Very good, very good. That's going to be. We have trivia coming up this Wednesday, and if the guys are watching tonight, that we just gave away one of the questions. But
damn it, I'm sorry.
Well, no. We'll still credit them if they are watching. They deserve to have a leg up. McDevitt has won one in '95 and 2022. Steel High 07, 08, 20, 22, and 23.
Here it comes.
Central Dauphin in 2011. So that McDevitt is looking. It's not hallowed ground, but only 6 schools in 36 years out of the Mid-Penn have won championships, and McDevitt's looking for their 3rd. So hats off to Coach Wechter, his guys at McDevitt, and I feel good about them. I just do. I think they're kind of primed. You know what I mean? I just kind of think they're probably feeling good about themselves, feeling good about their chances. You remember, and the last thing I'll say, Eric, you remember Wechter, how much after the game was over 2 years ago when they beat Aliquippa. I know I talked to him. He said, we just felt right. We felt like we were prepared, like it was our game. Remember that?
Well, and remember too, I mean, they had so much Division I talent on the defensive side of the ball that year too. I mean, they had the corners to handle Aliquippa. Tyshawn Russell went completely nuts in that game too, and they had no answer for him defensively, which was kind of surprising because that Quip team, they were loaded. There was no question they were loaded. I sort of feel like, and this is no knock on. I'm glad McDevitt moved up. I'm happy to see them play 5A. I'm happy to see them back in the Mid-Penn Commonwealth where I think they belong, but at the same time, if we never, ever get another McDevitt-Aliquippa game, the 3rd and final game, I'm going to feel kind of cheated.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anything, Travis, you want to say anything about any of the games before we break off here?
No, I just hope that, they're going to be some competitive games, and I hope Eric is right that, we'll have a competitive 6A game because that's been, pretty anticlimactic, watching St. Joe's Prep win the state championship.
I'm a St. Joe's fan too. I love watching them. Like I just don't get me wrong. I absolutely love watching because it's like the basketball thing. They have the best talent. You want to see the best talent on the field at the highest level,
right?
And it's unfortunate that the college coaches aren't going to be there this year because of the blackout period.
Yes.
James Franklin wouldn't be there anyway because they got a Big Ten title game on Saturday, but just the fact that some of these coaches won't be able to make that trip this year because of how late in the calendar it is where it falls with the NCAA. And the other thing too is how many guys are going to get opportunities after the weekend because signing day is Wednesday. Don't forget that. If guys can graduate early and get to a campus, there might be opportunities for some of these dudes that are unsigned somewhere along the way. And that's why it's kind of unfortunate that some of these coaches won't be there to see them over the weekend.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I don't know in the future if the PIAA really cares about it or not to make adjustments to get these college coaches at the games going forward. It should be interesting to see what happens.
Isn't that an NCAA thing, though,
Mm-hmm.
Eric? That's an NCAA thing, Terry.
No. I understand that.
Yeah, because I was kind of reading into it a little bit, and people were blasting the PIAA.
Yeah, it's not their fault.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying it was their fault, but I was wondering, like, now that they changed their rules at that level, will the PIAA adjust to it or not?
The biggest thing. Go ahead, Travis.
One of the things I think they need to do, they need to adjust, the timing of the transfer portal and signing because the transfer portal has kind of messed up signing day because colleges, especially a lot of these FCS colleges, you're looking at the transfer portal full. So transfer portal first. So there's kids who actually could be a low-level FBS or FCS player. They're not getting those scholarships right away because those teams are going to the transfer portal.
Well, and don't forget,
Right.
I mean, the portal's going to be nuts this year. The
Yep.
limit's going to go into place where they're going to be cutting how many guys off these teams now that are going to be just free agents basically and floating out there that won't get the opportunity. I think back to like how many times like we've seen, like, especially since he's been at Penn State, but Franklin, I mean, I hung out with Urban Meyer at the state finals one year, Tom Bradley, those guys, like it doesn't have the same like big event feel. And again, Franklin wouldn't be there Saturday anyway, because they got to go try to win a conference title, but
Right.
the PIAA, Terry's right. Like, I mean, you want him landing his helicopter on that field. You want him
Right.
showing up. You want, people
the-
taking pictures of him and stuff. You want
He
it
was
to be
there
an
last
event.
year. He was there
At the
last year.
at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So adjust, PIAA, adjust, like, so we can get these college coaches at these games.
There's two things that I wish that they would do in this state. Number one, have true spring games where schools play each other, not just like a team scrimmage within itself, but actually have spring football where you play an exhibition game against another school. Two, I wish that they would get the preseason going at the end of July, start the season earlier in August, a week earlier, cut a regular season game out, get these things over with by the time November's over. And if it falls over Thanksgiving weekend, I mean, I understand that they could adjust it to avoid Thanksgiving weekend, but they've got to do something again. I mean, I think we're like the last state in the country that's playing their state finals. How many other? Ohio's over. I think Florida's over. I think Michigan might be over too. Some of these ended 2 weeks ago. Like we are the first week in December, and it's going to be 23 degrees out Thursday night. We're going to be playing football for a title.
So as Terry said, and I see your point now. I apologize.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
We know what the dates are now. It's not up to the NCAA. It's their rules, their calendar. PIAA has to adjust to that so that things kind of fall into place better for everybody. And it is for everybody, So that's going to do it, guys. Next week, of course, we'll have one last recap. It'll be week 16, the state championships. We do have Fort Chapman joining us, hopefully, if he says he will be, and he's always a lot of fun to have and very knowledgeable. And he said he will be at the game. So, and then hopefully you guys will be available next week too. So, just want to thank Rickabaz Electric, Payor Apparel, Ted's Bar and Grill, Hoffman Ford, Freedom Financial Wealth Management, the Tire Mart, American Legion Post 272, Modern Imprint, Team PA, AAU Basketball, Crystal Bob at Howard Hanna Real Estate, Underdog Sports Bar and Grill, Capital Region Insurance Agency, Sam Hartley Decking, and Tonino's Pizza. They're our platinum sponsors responsible for bringing you tonight's show. Travis Waters, Terrence Clark Jr., Eric Thomas, thanks very much, guys. Hopefully Travis and I will be over there hanging out this weekend. We're still waiting to hear back from the PIAA. I usually get passes, but don't want to count our chickens. And if we are over there, Eric, we'll come up and say hello.
Yep, please do.
Best wishes, Eric Thomas, NFHS, doing all 6 games. Go to NFHS.com. That's Nancy Frank, Harry,
NFHS
Susan,
Network.
Thank you. .com. You can pay one monthly fee and watch every one of the games. Thanks, fellas. Have a great evening.
See you, boys.
All right. We'll see you. Thanks.
Take care.